Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder, the place where we decode the confusing language of corporate filings. And today we've got a real doozy that might make you feel like you're buying into something a little less than crystal clear. We are diving into the latest report from Blackrock Private Credit Fund, and let me tell you, it is a bit of a mixed bag with some interesting financial dealings and distribution news. So grab your coffee and let's break it down. Before we get started, if you love getting straight answers from these dense corporate documents, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And hey, we've got a fantastic community over on Discord, linked in the description below, where we go even deeper. Join the conversation. So first things first, this report is all about some deals that were not publicly registered. Think of it as private sales that the company is now disclosing. Specifically, the Blackrock Private Credit Fund has been selling its institutional class common shares. Now, these shares are going to special investment vehicles, basically funds created just to hold these specific shares. The important thing here is that these sales were exempt from the usual registration rules you see with publicly traded stocks. This is done under something called Section C and Regulation S, which are essentially pathways for private offerings. It means they are selling these shares directly without needing to go through the full public offering process. The filing details one specific sale. On the 2nd of September, they finalized the sale of a whopping 2,659,981, 058 shares. That is a lot of shares, and the price tag for this private placement was a cool $64,362,497.68. That is over $64 million worth of shares sold in what we recalling a private offering. They also mentioned that they issue shares to these same investment vehicles through a distribution reinvestment plan, which is a standard way for funds to handle investor money. Now, what this tells us is that the fund is actively placing its shares with specific types of investors, likely institutional ones themselves, rather than through a broad public market. This isn't necessarily good or bad just yet, but it is a sign of how this particular fund operates, relying on private placements for a significant chunk of its capital raising. Now let's talk about distributions, which is usually the more interesting part for investors. On the 26th of September, the fund declared a regular distribution for all its common share classes. This means they are paying out money to their shareholders. They've broken it down by share class, and we see a few different types here. Institutional shares are getting a gross distribution of $0.1976 per S-share, and there is no shareholder servicing or distribution fee for this class, so the net distribution is also $0.1976. Pretty straightforward for the big institutional players. Then we have Class S shares. These also have a gross distribution of $0.1976 per share. However, there is a shareholder servicing and or distribution fee of $0.0171. This means that after the fees are taken out, the net distribution for Class S shareholders is $0.1805 per share. So, a little less in the pocket for them compared to the institutional investors. And finally, Class D shares, they also get a gross distribution of $0.1976, but their fee is much lower, just $0.0050. So their net distribution comes out to $0.1926 per share. It is interesting to see these different fee structures. It shows how they try to cater to different types of investors with varying fee arrangements. These distributions are set to be paid out on the 29th of October to shareholders who are on record by the 29th of September. And for those who are part of the Fund S Distribution Reinvestment Plan, this money will be used to buy more shares of the fund automatically, which is a common strategy for long-term investors to grow their holdings. Now, let's as quickly touch on the net asset value, or NAV, per S-share as of the 31st of August. This is essentially the market value of the Fund S underlying assets minus its liabilities, divided by the number of shares outstanding. For all share classes, that includes institutional shares, Class S shares, and Class D shares, the NAV, per S-share was reported as $24.1966. This figure provides a snapshot of the Fund S value on a per share basis, and it is important for investors to track how this changes over time. And to wrap up the essentials, the report is signed off by Eric L. Queller, who holds the titles of Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer. This just confirms that the filing has been properly authorized by the key financial officers of the Blackrock Private Credit Fund. So looking at Blackrock Private Credit Fund's report, we see a company that is actively managing its capital through private placements, which is a bit different from publicly traded stocks. The distributions are declared, showing that they are indeed returning value to shareholders, although the net amount received varies slightly based on the share class and associated fees. The NAV gives us a baseline value for their shares. What is the story here? Well, for investors, it highlights the importance of understanding which share class you are invested in, as the fees can impact your net returns. The private sale of a significant block of shares suggests a controlled distribution strategy, possibly aimed at sophisticated investors who understand the fund's specific investment objectives. There are no immediate red flags in terms of malfeasance, but the private nature of some of these transactions means less transparency than you might find with a fully registered public offering. For the average investor, it reinforces the need to do thorough due diligence, especially when dealing with funds that employ such private placement strategies. The key takeaway is that while the fund is distributing income, the underlying mechanics of its capital raising and fee structures are worth noting for anyone considering an investment. Alright, that is our breakdown of the Blackrock Private Credit Fund's latest filing. What is your take on these numbers and what they signal for the company's future? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this analysis was valuable, hitting that like button really helps, and subscribe for more deep dives. Don't forget to check out the Discord in the description. Thanks for watching. See you next time.